So, COVID and the spirit world. That's what I'm going to talk about. I'm in ill mode. Um, that's why I'm unshaven. Ah, I've just been going to bed and getting up and not doing much else. And it looks like it's been COVID. I thought, well, I'll talk about this bloody thing. Yeah. I can't think what else it could have been. I haven't. No one's formally told me it's COVID, but you know, I was out of it, well, half out of it for nearly 2 weeks, and then the last 10 days, I've just been wasted half the time. And it's getting me thinking about it because there's a feeling of something a bit alien in there, something that looks a bit like metal. I haven't got that metal taste that some people have, but it's like I went to visit COVID in the spirit world. I was lying there in my bed yesterday, feeling a bit wasted, as I do several times a day. I thought, I'll just tune into this thing. And it was like I was in this room and it was like full of these metal sort of half Dalek things, yeah, which was the COVID. And my immune system didn't quite know what to do with it. That's why it goes on and on. That's why I feel wasted. It's still in my system because my system doesn't know quite what to do with it. It's done enough to hold it at bay, but to finally evict it, it doesn't quite know what to do. And I thought about it. Well, the way COVID came about, it came about through a lab. I mean, the scientists always thought there was a 20% chance of that. Because of what had been happening in that lab in Wuhan. And the circumstantial evidence became compelling a few years down the line. Of course, the Chinese weren't going to admit anything. Yeah? But what they did is they fast tracked this virus from, because you see, viruses can jump from animals to humans. We know this, but it takes them a while after they first jumped in. It takes them a while to adapt and become really infectious. And we're presumably adapting all along as well. It's this sort of game of cat and mouse, so to speak. But what they were doing in this lab is they were taking a virus that could jump and adding on that which would make it really infectious, which would make it really adapted, so it could really hook onto our cells. And it was doing that all in one go. And it was putting it into rabbits and seeing how they did. So presumably, they were experimenting, investigating into the process of adaptation of viruses to humans, which is a useful thing to do. But they were lax in their security procedures. This has come out as well. Yeah. And so it escaped. It's stupid to say it was deliberate because how does it benefit? Cui bono? How does it benefit the Chinese? It doesn't. It fucks them as well as everyone else. So they've got no motivation. But it was a fuck up, which is what happens. I mean, we had that foot and mouth outbreak, didn't we, in England about 15 years ago? It was a fuck up from a lab, and they managed to contain it before it spread. The cock up theory, the fuck up theory, is always the first port of call. It's usually the simplest explanation and the correct one. And that's what happened here. That seems most likely. So, because of their experiment, the COVID made the jump to being well adapted to humans all in one go. We had no time to adapt. We had no time to get used to it. And so we don't know quite what to do with it. And so it fucks us over. Excuse my continual use of French, but I'm ill, so I get a free pass. You might have noticed I've paused it twice so far. It's because I'm turning all the other apps that keep waving at me as I do this, so I can think straight. So, lying there in bed, well, I thought I'd tune into it. Like I said at the beginning, I tuned in, and it was like these metallic objects, like foreign, like aliens almost. And it's because we haven't had time to adapt. It's all been in one go, and we're still adapting. And these things happen in the spirit world as well as in this world. That's why you can heal disease through spirit intervention. because they go hand in hand. The whole scientific explanation is true, but so is the spirit explanation. And they both work alongside each other. And that's probably the best way to heal something, is to tune in to the spirit side of it, because that may also give us insights. I mean, I have to say, I don't mind being ill because I haven't got an awful lot to do. And I can do the things I have to do. And it throws me back into myself. It takes the pressure off, this cultural pressure almost to be busy all the time. Even when we're past official retirement age like me. But you don't have to be busy. It takes the pressure off when you're ill. You've got a good excuse. So you can just relax back into yourself. And that's what happens is I go back into myself. Even though I'm feeling a bit shit, I'm back in myself. I'm closer to myself. I'm closer to that level of me that is always there underneath the day-to-day busyness and pressure. It brings me closer to that. That's what drugs do as well. That's what alcohol does a bit. That's what weed does. That's what I find psychedelics do. Not that I do an awful lot of that kind of thing. Just stopped again. I got a spam telephone call. I'm being waved at from all directions. So I was talking about the positive side of being ill. It does bring me closer to myself. It brings me closer to that deeper kind of feeling and vision about why I'm here. And I always come out of being ill slightly changed because of that, and maybe for other reasons as well. I don't get ill very often. But when I do, something shifts, something happens. So yesterday, I tuned into the COVID. In a way, I sat with it in the spirit world. I don't know why I'd never thought of doing that before. I sat with it in the spirit world. I didn't try to do anything. In the spirit world, you don't try and do stuff. You just stay with it and let the spirits take care of whatever's happening. You may not know what's going on around you. You might have a sense. I'm in this kind of lab with these metallic things and this sense of furry spirit animals around me as well. That's about as far as it goes. It is quite warm, even though it's cold and metallic. It's quite warm and it feels quite busy, and it's like they're trying to do something. And it helps if I'm there just by showing up. It helps make that link between the spirit world and this world, and it speeds it all up. And then today, having done that yesterday, I actually went out and did some gardening. Yeah? It's like something has shifted forward. There's been this quantum leap in my recovery. And my sense is that because I stayed with COVID in the spirit world as well as this world. And I've done a bit more of that today. It's been quite a deep thing. It's an interesting thing to do. Now, here's a couple of things coming out of that. One, there's a level on which humanity collectively needs to adapt to COVID in the spirit world as well as in this world. As I said, they go hand in hand. And if one of us does it, that has a ripple out effect. It's a 100th monkey thing when you're doing the spirit world. I think that's why the 100th monkey thing works, is because there's a spirit world side of it as well, in which knowledge is shared. So whatever's happening, whatever way, those furry things in my spirit world are finding ways of slowly adapting to COVID, finding their way around it. Because, as I say, COVID happened all in one go. There wasn't that time to adapt, which would occur naturally. And that's why it feels unnatural and a bit alien. That could spill over collectively. The more of us that can tune in to the COVID on the spirit world and help that recovery and help that adaptation, the more humanity will adapt to it. It's an osmosis kind of thing. That's what I think. The other thing is I remember when I first started doing journeying, like 30 years ago nearly now, 27 years ago actually. I was just taken to these bits of myself that needed a bit of help, and the spirits would like dismember me, or they'd show me this thing, this trussed chicken, and they'd put it in a bank or a river and leave it there to kind of cook. A few weeks later, I'd forgotten all about it. I'd be doing a journey. They go, oi, that bit's ready to come out now. So I take it out and they put it back in there. So there's all this soul work, all this healing, all this retrieval work going on in me from the spirits. I was told by the guy teaching me, well, I've never heard of that. You've got to have other people do the healing work for you. Well, that wasn't what was happening. My experience always contradicts the dogma. I don't need to try. Something just happens and goes, here we go. Here's how it can happen differently. Anyway, and so this process of the spirits doing their work on me, it changed me in quite a deep way, quite quickly. It built a new solid foundation in me in which I felt much more confident of my own connection to spirit and less leaning to lean on tradition to do that. We do need tradition, particularly when we're not really sure of our own guidance within, which we're not usually to start with. It's something that needs to be built. But it helped free me of that and help me find my own connections more deeply. So it was this ongoing cooking. And so it reminded me of that, what's happening with COVID and the spirit world for me. There's this ongoing cooking. I'm just tuning into it. I don't need answers. I don't need to know what is happening. I just have this sense of it. And I have a visual counterpart as well. Not everyone will have a visual counterpart. I do. Some people might have word counterparts. They might have spirits turning up and telling me what's going on. I don't get that. I'm too good with words in this reality. The spirits go, we're not giving you any bloody words in that other reality, yeah? You need to learn of a different way of knowing, a different way of knowing that doesn't involve words. And feel that as knowledge, feel that as knowing. That's kind of my lesson there. One way of putting it. So, yeah, I've tuned in to this sense of my healing in the spirit world. And I think that that's something we can do generally. Whether it's literal physical healing we need for something, or it's just a soul healing. I mean, any physical healing is kind of both. Soul and spirit, isn't it? How could it not be? How could it not be? How could a physical element not also have a soul compartment? Because otherwise it's like, well, matter's dead. Matter's not dead. Matter is always inspirited. So if there's something out of balance on the material level, well, it's out of balance on the spirit level as well, because they're intertwined. Spirit and matter can't be separated. They're like the outer and inner dimensions of one thing. I think that's a good way of looking at it. They're the same thing. So that's my reflections. And I think I'm going to carry that with me for everything. Anything in you that needs healing, tune into the spirit level of where it is and just visit that occasionally. Make sure you visit that once a day. Say hello, give a few thanks, acknowledge it, appreciate it. You don't have to know what's going on, and then just carry on with the rest of your life. We don't need shamans to heal us. We can do it ourselves. That just came to me. And we need to be able to do these things ourselves. Of course, healers can help us sometimes. Of course, we need their help sometimes. But really, there's so much we can do with ourselves. So much that the spirits will help us do. Okay, I'll leave it there.